Best we be prepared for anything to drop out.
Yeah. The Cinematic Sausage, Season 3, Take 1.
Greetings and salutations, dear listener. This is the voice of Warren H. Cummings, and you're more than welcome in joining us in this Halloween edition of the Cinematic Sausage, where somewhere in a maternity ward, a baby almost suddenly does not wish to be born. Last Halloween, I was joined by Paul Chandler, the Shy Yeti. Well, he's here again, this time looking at another camp 1970s horror classic. Last time it was Giallo, this time it's a very British film with some very cod Italian accents.
What's wrong, sir?
This one doesn't want to be born.
And joining me in this edition is Paul Chandler, the Shy Yeti. Hiya, Paul.
Hi, how you doing?
I'm not too bad. How's your good self? How are you diddling?
Oh, pretty good.
Good. There's nothing worse than diddling wrong, is there?
Oh, no one wants that.
No.
I must say, I don't think we'll hear from him necessarily, but Dealey is here, and he watched the film with me today as well, so... He may not speak because he's still traumatized. He's still traumatized, boy. No, he looks happy enough. I think he enjoyed it.
For those of you who have not been introduced to Dealey, because I don't think Dealey's appeared before, Dealey's your cat. How old's Dealey? Dealey's just a grand old gentleman now, isn't he?
Yeah, I mean, he's, depending when this goes out, he's 19 in October.
Heavens to Murgatroyd. I feel young. What's that in cat years?
Oh, it's pretty old. Yeah, I'd have to look on the internet, but yeah, it's pretty old. In his 80s, I thought.
We love Dealey. Dealey's a very good critic, I would say.
Yes. He's often appears on my show, the Charlotte podcast.
Shameless plug there. Like it.
Very casual. Yeah, he often appears when you don't expect him to. Sometimes, like, we're supposed to be on a spaceship or something, and suddenly you get meow. And so we just have to, as we like improvising, we just like, oh, Dealey, did you stow aboard the spaceship? Or, oh, Dealey, you're in America. How did you stow away my rucksack?
Well, to be fair, Dealey could turn up in this film that we're about to take a look at, and it wouldn't be strange or out of place whatsoever, would it? Really?
No.
Would you like to explain to the audience what you're going to be looking at this edition, please?
Well, this film potentially has 4 different titles, and the title I know it best by is probably the title that I've not seen it called since I first saw it in the late 80s, known as I Don't Want to Be Born. And I'm sure that's the version I saw when I watched it on Late Night Late in the very late 80s or early 90s. But it's also known as The Monster, which I think my DVD or Blu-ray copy is The Monster. But it's also known as The Devil Within Her. And actually that's the version I watched today, because even though I have a nice Blu-ray copy and probably still my DVD copy, I decided to see if there was a copy on the internet, because then I didn't have to go and find it. Yeah. And it happened that the version that was on the internet was The Devil Within Her. So, and the other title is Sharon's Baby, because I guess is kind of sort of a rip-off of Rosemary's Baby, except there's no character called Sharon, so I don't really know how that works.
Well, I was a little bit cheeky, and I delved onto YouTube, because it's just so tempting to go onto YouTube and see if somebody else has reviewed this. There are very few reviews of this, and there's a guy from Scotland who does a lot of horror reviews, and he couldn't work out why the hell it was called Sharon's Baby. Yeah, he said, other than the fact that it's going to appeal to the American audience, and it's twanging at the rip-off of Rosemary's Baby, but this is not Rosemary's Baby, is it?
No, I saw an American guy reviewing it as well. and he had lots of questions. Where should we start? It's from
I have
1975.
lots of questions. I have loads of questions, but yeah, fire away.
It's from 1975. It's a British horror film directed by Peter Sasdy. Now, isn't he involved with the sort of Hammer and things like that?
Yeah, he directed the really good Hands of the Ripper. I don't know if you've ever seen that. That's the female Jack the Ripper. It's the daughter of Jack the Ripper.
Is that another film with Ralph Bates in? I'm sure.
Yes, it is.
Yeah. He also directed Nigel Neal's The Stone Tape.
I have seen his name a couple of times on BBC M boards where he showed his direction. I mean, he also did the 1972 Doomwatch film. But yeah, he's synonymous really with Hammer films.
He did some Sherlock Holmes in the 60s and the 80s.
Yeah.
Not the Jeremy Brett versions, but
no, he was responsible for Jeffrey Whitehead playing Sherlock Holmes when they filmed it over in Poland. But yeah, he did direct Christopher Lee and John Steed. Patrick McNee as Dr. Watson.
He also directed The Secret Diary of Adrian Mole. He really does.
Really?
Yes. And he's still alive. So.
Do you think he'd ever want to talk about this film?
I'm not sure.
I like this film. Honestly, I do like this film. And it was you that introduced me to it. And it's bonkers. Sorry, it is. It's absolute bonkers.
No, it's often, the nearest comparison would be The Exorcist or Rosemary's Baby, or
The Omen even.
Or The Omen, yeah, although it's actually ahead of The Omen as far as being released.
I mean, Omen was just aping this film, wasn't it, really?
Yeah, they saw that. Well, another example I'll give using a Doctor Who reference is that I often get criticised for how much I like Destiny of the Daleks, which is not considered to be one of the best of the Dalek stories, and it's the second of the Tom Baker Dalek stories. And the big Tom Baker Dalek story is Genesis of the Daleks, which is considered to be a classic. And yet, I definitely watch Destiny of the Daleks far more than I ever watched Genesis. And in the same way with The Exorcist, I definitely watch I Don't Want to Be Born far more than I ever watched The Exorcist. It might be about even with Rosemary's Baby, because Rosemary's Baby is a favourite. But yeah, I mean, it's just more daft, more silly, more fun. It takes itself seriously. It has got a cult following these days, but it's partly because of itself, of it taking itself so seriously, when really it can't be taken seriously. But that's part of its delight.
Would you say it's one of those films that you would come home to, and if you've had a couple of beverages with friends down at the local hostelry, that's the sort of thing you put on a late night to sit up and watch and eat some rubbish food and perhaps have another bottle of beer just to watch this, to watch the evening out with this.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I watched it stone cold sober over lunchtime today, and it was still fun, but it'd be even more enjoyable in the way that you described.
Well, in a rare fortification for myself, I have opened a can of Indian Pale Ale because I know this one's going to be a doozy.
Yeah. Before we say too much more, I should say that let's go from one end of the scale to the other. In the acting stakes, we've got Joan Collins in the middle of her sort of 70s horror film stage.
You forget really how many horror films she actually did during the sort of early to sort of late 70s. She's quite pronounced in the horror films, especially for companies like Amicus as well, isn't she?
Yeah. And we've got Ralph Bates, who had been in Hammer films. I looked. He'd been sort of doing TV in the 60s, and then in the early 70s sort of moved more into movies and Poldark.
Yeah, the original Poldark in the BBC drama, yeah.
But notably, this is the last film he made for quite a few years.
It's quite sad because he died at quite a young age, and he died at 51, didn't he, for prostate cancer? But he was quite well known on British TV, more than I think he was on the film film side, but you have to explain to me the character that he plays.
Well, he plays the Italian husband of Joan Collins, but his accent is a very fleeting at times, and I mean, I don't really know, other than, well, one of the other actors is Eileen Atkins, and she plays his sister, and she's a nun, so she has to do an Italian accent as well.
Contento di vederti. Non sei cambiata. Non sei cambiato.
Oh, no. Now I'm here. We are only going to speak English.
You met my secretary, Sheila?
Yes, I have. How do you do?
How do you do?
Now, before you go to lunch, Sheila, could you get me Sims on the phone, please?
Yes, sir.
But
She's fantastic.
But I'm sure there must be nuns that aren't Italian, so really, they could have they didn't have to worry about the.
I like the fact, this is my sister, Albania, and then a nun walks in, and you're going, okay, it's a nun, but she has and like Ralph Bates, her accent is cod, isn't it? It is pure cod. It's just been caught out the North Sea, and she has a wonderful way, and I'm going to put the clip in the moment, of her pronouncing the devil in Italian, and every time she said it, I just cracked up laughing. The devil. The devil. The final big member of the cast is Donald Pleasence as the Doctor.
Congratulations, Mr. Collins. It's a boy.
Mom, is Lucy all right?
Oh, yes, she's fine now. It was a bit of a struggle, man.
Oh, but the baby's all right?
Yes, more than all right. A big, healthy fellow. One of the biggest I've ever had to cope with. Nearly 12 pounds, I would say.
Well, we'll come to some of them, but there are one or two. Can you name the two kids' TV presenters? That's probably not fair to them.
Yes.
There are a lot more than that. Well, at least one of them certainly is. Can you name the two kids' TV presenters that appear in this film?
Right. Before I do, I have to point out that 3 of the actresses went on to be dames, didn't they?
Oh, yes, Eileen Atkins,
Joan Collins, and the other famous children presenter. She used to appear in Play School, and it was Fluella Benjamin, because I, like yourself, like a bit of retro TV, and it's amazing what she pops up on.
And yet, considering that at the time she was on Play School and Play Away, I would imagine by 75, and in a main role, when I've seen her in films or in other things, it's been very small. Like she plays a nurse, and most of the time she's behind a mask. I'm not even sure she gets a line, but she's also in the first episode of Bergerac, and for some reason has been dubbed. I can't understand why you'd. I mean, the only thing I can think is that because she does have quite a posh accent, really, or well-spoken accent. I wonder whether she was a bit too posh for the role she was playing in Bergerac, but I'm sure she could have changed her accent. But
so who's the second?
Andrew Seacombe, who is Harry Seacombe's son, but he was definitely in kids TV. Fast forward in the 80s, so at that point he probably wasn't. I think this was his first role of any sort. Where he plays like the handyman who comes to who finds the dead mouse.
Down the drain. The smallest mouse in the world he finds like, down the biggest drain.
Yeah, you think that he's going to pull out some massive rat thing.
I thought he was going to pull out a rat. This is a tiny mouse.
Then it ends up in one of the other characters' cups of tea. But,
yes. Talking of dubbing, did you notice Carolyn Munro was dubbed?
I wasn't sure. Was she? Yes, because she plays Joan Collins' friend. Because Joan Collins used to work in a sort of a slight.
Let's say it how it is. She worked at a strip club.
But thankfully, she never had to. She wasn't required to remove her clothes in the film.
Although we do see her in what will be which would be reported as perhaps we say the full kit of underwear.
Yeah. But yeah, it's not as bad as some films at that time.
Oh, you mean like The Bitch?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Well,
or the Stud.
Although I suppose she was because it was her sister's book and it was her project, I guess she didn't do that unwillingly. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
So we've got also other actors, and I didn't notice that Caroline Munro was dubbed. I know she said "darling" a lot.
Hello, darling. How are you? How have you been? Okay, come on in. After seeing that wrecked nursery, I'd believe anything.
Mandy, I'm really worried. He's getting bigger every day.
Well, did you tell the doctor what you told me?
How can I tell the doctor? But I think my baby's possessed by a devil.
There was. It wasn't until about a couple of lines in that I was going, hold on a minute. I think they think Carolyn Munro's a bit posh here. Well, Carolyn Munro is very well spoken, and they've given her like a Cockney twang made to it, haven't they? Because that's what all strippers sound like. Although Carolyn Munro always keeps her clothes on and whatever she does, she keeps very good modesty, and she doesn't take any clothes off in this, even though she's a stripper. But yet there are a couple of walk-ons. One who's very hilarious, that when she's being ignored, she goes, "Oi, don't you like the goods?"
Only a couple more. Stick with me. Boy, when I see these new girls, I realise how much we miss you.
Oh, Tommy, still the same old flattery. You know I was lousy most of the time.
But when you were good, you were very, very good.
Am I boring you?
Oh, get this one. Got temperament. Okay, Pavlova, go on. The dying, bleeding swan. Maybe all right for Covent Garden, but it won't do much for a Randy Oilsheik on a night out.
It's an interesting cast.
There's a couple of cameos. I know we're going left, right, and centre here, but there are a couple of policemen who turn up who are played by faces that people would recognise from like sitcoms and
Benfield, Mr.
Benfield and Stanley Labore, who was in Ever Decreasing Circles.
Yeah, I mean Derek Benfield was wasn't he Time Slip? Time Slip, yes, he was Time Slip.
He was also apparently he was in Coronation Street in the 60s for quite a long time.
He's a person that never seems to change. He's got that eternal face.
Oh, before we go on to the plot, I should say that
there's a plot.
The music is by Ron Grainer.
Yeah.
Who is known for Doctor Who and Steptoe and Son and Tales of the Unexpected and
I love the TV. Yeah.
Probably not one of his better. I mean, it wasn't. I was kind of listening to it and thinking, am I missing something? Is this better than I realise? But then I watched a couple of YouTube reviews, and other people sort of said it was like the music had been made before and he hadn't actually seen the film because it didn't really suit. And there was a lot of driving around London scenes.
There was a hell of a lot of padding, wasn't there?
But I did think at least that, you know, sometimes in films that use London, they're driving down Kensington, and the next thing you know, they're going past Tower Bridge or something, and they just play
fast and loose with
the geography. Whereas the geography was kind of mainly kept to. There were times when they were driving along because Joan and her husband lived. So I think off the King's Road, it looked like sort of that area. Yeah. So not too far from Belgravia, and although it didn't quite come into the area where I worked, it was you were as close as Hyde Park Corner and things like that.
Yeah.
And at least when they were supposed to be heading back towards Kensington, the visuals confirmed they were heading back to get there, and they really. It didn't matter, but it you could tell it. For somebody, if you knew it, you could say, okay, yeah. And I know silly things like that though can annoy people like us.
I pick things up on like that because you'll watch somebody will be travelling around on the bus and you think, that bus goes up there, and then all of a sudden there'll be, hold on, that bus doesn't go there.
Yeah.
It's weird. Or you walk up that street, it doesn't take you here,
which is fine, really.
But this is based. The King's Road was the hit place, wasn't it, in the 60s, late 60s, early 70s. And it's also, living off the King's Road is a very clear signal to say, these are rich people.
Yeah, it was good, but I like that they kept to the rough geography a bit better than in some of the recent James Bond films. They've had James Bond going down the Thames, and it's like jump about 20 minutes. Suddenly they're at the Millennium Dome, and a minute ago they were just at Westminster, sort of thing.
Yeah, it bugs me as well. It really bugs me. You've got to have some kind of, if you want to retain the realism, you've got to get the small facts right as well, haven't you?
Yeah, plot wise.
I have to say this. Do you not think you've left out the crucial member of the cast?
Just George Clayton.
George Clayton, yeah. Third Oompa Loompa on the left.
Yeah. He was also in the Magical Mystery Tour.
Yeah.
And he's sort of the nearest to a baddie in this film.
Yeah. Did you also know what his bizarre job was in 1966?
I don't think I did. That must have been just before he did the Magical Mystery Tour.
Yeah, in 1966, he wore the mascot suit for the UK World Cup.
Mm-hmm.
In 1966, when they won it.
Mm.
He was the guy to be wearing, I can't remember what it's called. It was a lion. I know it was a lion. I can't remember what it was. Oh, World Cup Willie. That was it. He wore the costume of World Cup Willie.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Which is quite bizarre. I presume it's because of his stature, because George is a very short person, isn't he?
Yes. Yeah.
And his character is called Hercules. Yeah, I just, the mixture of this cast and ensemble is just beggars belief, isn't it? Because there's a lot of people coming up. You've got Ralph Bates, Joan Collins, Ian Atkinson, Donald Pleasence is established, and you've got your staples that would appear briefly in a horror film like Caroline Munro. Yeah. And all of a sudden, Fluella Benjamin pops up. It's a really good cast, yeah.
There are other people in it, like John Steiner, who I recognised, but I'm not. I've seen this film so many times. I'm not sure if I mainly recognise him from this film. No, actually, that isn't the case, because I look into some of the things he did. He was in some of the Giallo films I like.
Really?
Although he's an English actor.
Yeah.
He was in Mario Bava's Shock, Dario Argento's Tenebrae, Ruggiero Diodato's Body Count, all of which I've seen. So, yeah, I have seen him in other places. I mean, he was in a few other films as well. Yeah, so I have seen him beyond having seen this film many times. Apparently, as well as speaking English, he spoke French, Italian, and German, which would probably explain why he got work overseas. He died last year at the age of 81.
Really?
Unfortunately, in a car crash, so not natural causes.
Yeah.
He retired from acting in 91 and moved over to California. He plays the boss of the strip club, who is kind of really sort of sleazy towards Joan Collins even after she's got married. And
he is really. I mean, he tries it on.
Yeah.
At any chance he can, doesn't he? And he is just. He almost oozes under the crack in the door and appears standing next to her, doesn't he? He's that slimy.
Probably the other person we should mention is Hilary Mason.
Yes.
Who is the nanny.
Old crone.
She's known for. Well, she one of the things she's best known for is Don't Look Now, from around the same time. But she was in things like Zed Cars and Dixon of Doc Green and Ripping Yarns and the 80s Miss Marple.
Yeah, she used to do a lot of sitcoms as well.
Yeah.
And this is the thing about British films. The thing that it was thriving on at this particular moment is horror, and very cheap horror, but still horror. It was trying to sort of reignite the film industry with films that perhaps wouldn't stand up to scrutiny today, but are often seen as quite cultish, especially this one, isn't it?
Looking at the plot, we've got Joan Collins, who is Lucy, and she's married to Ralph Bates, his character, who is called Gino Carlisi, and Joan Collins is Lucy Carlisi as his wife, and they live in London. And the film starts with her giving birth, and it's not a very easy birth. And Donald Pleasence, as the doctor, is heard to comment, "This one doesn't want to be born," within the first couple of minutes. But the baby is born, and it's named Nicholas. And yeah, there's a comment that Gino wanted an Italian name and Lucy wanted an English name, and it sounds like Lucy won out on that choice. Yeah, the baby's quite a big baby. It's quite violent and quite early on. Whilst Gino is very excited about being a father, he comes into the room and finds Lucy very upset because the baby scratched her within minutes of them sort of cuddling back in the ward.
Which is odd because the baby at no point seems to give off that sort of Damien look, does it? Because it is
too young.
It's far too young. It doesn't give that sort of glary stare, and it's like, oh, isn't it still a sweet baby?
They do try and get close-ups of it when it looks a bit constipated, or
oh God, yeah, it looks like somebody's dangling a Farley's rusk above it, and it's looking at it just past the camera, and it wants, give me the rusk or I'll rip your throat out.
Lucy, where are you? Lucy.
He's bad at me. He hates me.
The baby isn't harmed in any way. We have to make this clear because, I mean, sometimes you think, oh no, they're bringing a child, they're causing it grief and hassle because it's a horror film. This child wouldn't have known anything that was going on, and 9 times out of 10, it was just a empty pram, wasn't it?
Yeah, there's a few times where it looks like the camera might be slightly shaking to make it look like the baby's being shaken, but it's actually the camera moving rather than the baby. And as things go on, weird things happen, like that they hear when Karen Monroe's character
Mandy,
they hear a commotion upstairs, and the whole room's being trashed, and the baby's just lying there, and there's no. There is quite a lot of drinking before lunchtime in this film.
There's very much a culture of that, isn't there?
Yeah.
How are you, dear? I'm fine. Should we have a drink? Oh yes, please. I need one.
Yeah,
it's like 10:30.
And Lucy begins to sort of, think there's something not right, and then we get a flashback to when she worked at the strip joint, and with Mandy and with George Claydon's character Hercules, who
they do this bizarre set, don't they, where she dances round him and jiggles round him, and he's like looking up at her, and he's sort of enamored by her beauty, isn't he? He's sort of it's almost the being drawn in by Medusa, and he's hypnotized by her beauty, and they play around, and by her own admission, isn't it? He says, I led him on a bit.
Because she's about to go on tour. It's not totally clear. She's about to go on tour to Italy with the club. But I got a bit confused because it's mentioned that was the last night she was going to be there, and I don't know if she didn't know she was going to meet Gino, or whether she already knew him and he sort of rescued her from. That's a little bit.
Yeah, it's very vague. There's a big hole in how they meet, isn't there? Because you'd have thought that he would have known what her background was, but yet he never mentions it.
You don't get any scenes in Italy to completely sort of explain. Because to start with, I thought that she, it was almost like she was going to she knew him already, and she was leaving the club to go and get married to Gino. But then there's a talk of, actually no, she's going over there with some people from the club, presumably to do something in Italy, and then presumably met him. But it's all a bit contradictory and a bit not that well explained. But,
also, there's a sort of let's be fair, this is a seedy little strip joint.
Yeah.
It's somewhere in central London, and you wouldn't expect them to be going on a tour to Italy. It's quite weird because it's only a small concern, isn't it? Because whenever you see it, there's this like tiny stage and a few chairs and tables around there, and there's usually hardly anybody in there.
You see strip joints in 70s films. It always surprises me that it's often husband and wives at the tables. It's not like a load of leering men. It seems like
in long brown coats, large pockets.
It seems to be like almost like a quite not much different than going to see a belly dancer or something.
But could that be the continental influence, do you think? Because places like Germany and France are at that time were very much the case of couples would go to an erotic show, wouldn't they?
Except that it's not very erotic.
it's about as erotic as making cheese on toast.
So actually, that's true. Cheese on toast sounds quite good.
I'm reading a little thing here. So when Hercules does make his feelings known for her, he makes a southern. It could be southern slide. A sudden lunge for her breasts, causing her to scream out in shock.
And then the stage manager, Tommy, played by John Steiner, comes in, but then he's just as bad. But then she's had a bit of history with him anyway, which is why I'm confused with. That's what makes me think that she didn't know Gino, and the next day she met him when she went to it. Because she wouldn't be having.
She's very fickle as well, isn't she? Right. I think she's a very damaged person. But she said Hercules is told to sling his hook, and after she's been sexually assaulted by Hercules, he gets her naked and they make love. Although it's hinted more than anything else.
But then she actually does leave the club, and Hercules comes out on the stage and curses her like some sort of
demented dwarf.
And he says, "You will have a baby, a monster, an evil monster conceived inside your womb, as big as I am small and possessed by the devil himself."
Shut my eyes and wake up under a blue sky with the sun shining. The club and everything about it suddenly seemed seedy and nasty. Anyway, it didn't bother me. All I could think of was, Italy, here I come.
You will have a baby, a monster, an evil monster conceived in your womb, as big as I am small and possessed by the devil himself.
As quite a few people who've watched this have said, it's not really explained what, could anybody say these sort of things? Could I go and put a curse on the man next door if I wanted to? I mean, there's no indication that he's a wizard or
there's no backstory at all on a lot of the characters. There's no deep, in-depth sort of, he was born the seventh son of the seventh family in the seventh year, in the seventh month. And a crow pooed on his head.
The only thing I can think of is some awful sort of, because of his size, they're making people of the time watching it would just kind of think, oh yeah, he probably could do a curse and it would be fine.
Yes, he's been afflicted with a restriction of height, so therefore he's passing on his misfortune of birth to somebody else.
It's really badly explained, but
were you scared by his curse?
I was petrified.
I was like left gobsmacked. I went, what did I just see that? And she just wanders off.
So time moves on, and I mean, this happens as a flashback anyway. So we're back to the present day, and she's got her baby, and she's there with Mandy, and she's upset, and things sort of keep going wrong, and they keep trying to talk to the doctors about is this something that's particularly weird or
I think in its postnatal depression, aren't they?
Yeah.
Well, Donald Pleasence does.
Dr. Finch.
Dr. Finch. It's almost want to say Dr. Finley.
Yeah.
Yes, Dr. Finch. Now, Donald Pleasence. Now he's been doing horror films for a while, and I don't know if you've seen Deathline.
Yes. Yeah.
As soon as I saw him, I thought he's just doing an upmarket version of his police inspector in Deathline. And to be honest, Paul, I want to do a review of Deathline with you one day because I love that. Because this is that sort of ilk of film, isn't it, in the 70s?
Behind the doors.
Behind the doors.
If you haven't seen it, that you will hear more of that.
Oh, absolutely, yes.
So around this time, you've got Mandy popping in. You've got the no-nonsense housekeeper, Mrs. Hyde, played by Hilary Mason.
Oh, she's the stroppy mare, isn't she? She always plays a stroppy mare, and she says, "I won't stay over here a minute of my time, and the child's bitten me." And
also you've got Gino's sister Albana, played by Eileen Atkins, who comes over. She's staying in a convent down the road. Or church or something down the road, so she can continue her work because she's in
a laboratory, isn't she? Which is quite interesting. Yeah, she's into a lot of heavy science stuff and experimentation, isn't she? I almost expected when she was a sister that when the doors open there'd be like a shaft of light and she would step forth from it. It's she's presented very much like that. Oh. She's a nun, and you don't expect that. I don't know whether it was going to be a running joke, but oh, she's a nun.
And I may have
pretty nun, actually, to be fair.
Yes, she looks sort of younger than I've seen, although I've seen things from that period. But considering that she's covered up, except for her face, she come on, Deals.
Hi, Deals.
Are you going to join us?
You see, you've mentioned nuns and set off Deals.
Yeah, you're a big fan of nuns, aren't you, James? I may have spoken out of turn when I said that Mrs. Hyde is much more the housekeeper. She's not the nanny, although there are slightly elements of nanny work she does do. But then they actually get a nanny, but then or nurse. There's weird things start happening to her. She has to bath the baby, nearly drowns.
Yes, she says she had this sort of compelled thing of sticking her head in the water and not wanting to bring it up out of the water again.
Lucy and Gina were like, "Well, why were you even doing that at midnight?" And she was like, "Oh, well, the baby made a mess, and that seemed to be the best way to do that, to clean him up." But so she survives that mysterious encounter, but not for long, because the next day she's out in the park with the pram.
Sorry.
with the pram, and suddenly this big man's hand sort of shoves her off the pier, and she smashes her head on the rock and drowns.
Yeah. There are, I think, three set piece deaths in this. One is Ralph Bates, which again, I'm sorry, I sat there going, what did I just witness? And this one where, the little, or the man's hand comes out from beneath the blankets in the pram and pushes her into the lake. I went, sorry, and I had to literally rewind that to watch it because I started to snigger at that point.
There are times when Lucy sees the baby as a flash to Hercules and sees Hercules instead. So it cuts to the actor who plays Hercules dressed up like a baby in a pram or in the bed.
In his cot, yeah.
Yeah, which as much as it's supposed to be scary, ends up being more hilarious because it's just ridiculous. Because as one can imagine, of course, I mustn't leave the drowned nanny without saying there's a scene where an old lady is like, "Oh, let me walk." She's walking her dogs by the side of the lake, and she's like, "Oh dear, look, there's a pram. I wonder who would leave a lovely pram by. Oh, a lovely baby." And then she sees the dead body and does a very good scream.
She does a very good mock scream. I have to say, prams have changed, but yes. I've seen pictures of myself. That was a Silver Cross. Silver Cross was a very good quality pram, and a lot of people had them. And yeah, that was the archetypal pram that you would see nannies pushing around as well.
Yeah,
and it was a typical pram that people would have, any family would have. And I just like, nowadays it's all like plastic and things, isn't it?
Isn't it the sort of pram that you'd see in the logo for Rosemary's Baby as well?
Yeah.
A pram in the logo for that one, on the video case or around this time.
I have to say though, I did expect her to die because they were just outside Slough in that well-known Black Park.
Oh, was it Black Park? I thought it looked like. I thought it looked like Black
Park, isn't it? Oh, we need to film something by a lake. Or instead of going to do it in a pond in the park somewhere, all the film companies seem to go to Black Park, don't they?
So around this time, Lucy and Gina have been talking to Dr. Finch and suggested that he's given her advice, but it's all very weak, really. But he has said that if these ideas don't work, they might have to look into any problems in the parents' family or things that might go into like DNA type issues. Lucy is a little bit unsure whether Tommy at the strip club could actually be the father because she got pregnant very soon. So it's either that she got together very quickly with Gino.
It brings into the question whether she married Gino because she was pregnant. Yeah, so that
or they had a fling quite quickly and she got pregnant. So then they got
because it makes a muck up of the timeline. But it's interesting that she has to be married in this for appearance's sake, because still, even in the 70s, it was a big thing, wasn't it? Single parentage.
And she goes to visit Tommy in the club and
God, while he's auditioning girls.
That's when he's auditioning
it's so seedy, isn't it?
And then when she lets on while she's talking to him, he's like, "Oh, you want to blame me on your kid being sort of being weird."
Very weird.
But he still eventually says, "Oh well, I'll come. I want to see your kid, and I want to see what you're talking about." And he goes over there and gets punched in the face. And it sounds, the sound effect sounds like something off the Sweeney, where somebody's in the middle had a really big sort of slap or punch.
Yeah.
But you don't see, you just see him stagger into camera shot.
Yeah, and this is the weird thing, isn't it? You would have thought with a moment like that, you would have seen it, but you don't. It happens off camera, doesn't it?
Yeah. I mean, Lucy's almost quite pleased. I mean, he's kind of pleased that he got. But then she gets one. She gets one of her flashbacks.
Sees Hercules again in the pram.
I can't remember if that's the last time we see Tommy.
It is. He just disappears, doesn't he? I would have thought that the baby would have hunted him down and done horrible things to him, but he just carries on his life as if nothing happened to him. I suppose the moral of the story is there that bad things only happen to good people to a certain extent in real life. But he
around this time. There's one of your you sent me a message of one of your favourite lines.
Yes.
Between Dr. Finch and Sister Alvana. Do you remember how it?
Because they're having a scientific conversation, and the doctor's quite surprised of how up on modern scientific terms the sister is, and he says to Sister, "You would have made an excellent scientist and an excellent doctor." She just turns round, totally deadpan, looks him in the face and goes, "You'd make a terrible nun." And I think it's the delivery. It's just like...
We'll take a look at the baby, and then I'll make the necessary arrangements. You would have made a very good doctor, Sister.
Yes? You would not have made a very good nun, Doctor.
really off the cuff looks at you, you'd be a terrible nun. As if he's expecting a compliment back, and she does not give him a compliment back.
That sounds like a line, except that it's not delivered as a comedy line, although it has a certain comic but it's done very deadpan. But it does sound like it could have been in a Carry On film, couldn't it?
Yeah, it's a slap in the face because she's found him patronising. Really, she's found that patronising. But it from an audience point of view, that's a wonderful put down line.
Things start to go downhill pretty quickly from this point. Gina has plans with Lucy. They're talking about going away and somebody looking after the baby so they can just relax for a bit.
But the baby has other plans.
Yeah, baby has other plans. Gina goes and checks the baby once they get in, only to find the nursery empty, the window open, and odd noises coming from the garden. Sound suspiciously like Muttley from Wacky Races. Baby's weird, where it's crying, and they, cause it's very difficult to make this baby look scary, and they put what sounds like a rainforest sound effect behind the crying. But I mean, surely they could have just done echo effects on the crying, or sort of, or Ron Grainer could have done some sort of music that would. I wonder how much he was involved with this film as far as like scoring it, and actually when he'd actually seen it, whether they just said do this.
I doubt whether he ever saw it. I wonder whether if he saw it, he would take his music away. I think he's just been asked to do a bog standard score, please.
Yeah.
And he went, "What's the film about?" "Oh, just a couple in London with a child," and that's how he scored it. Yeah. Not that it's a homicidal child with huge hands that kills people.
So anyway, Gina goes out to the backyard, and a noose comes down for the tree.
Where does the noose come from?
Well, I mean, this is where some of the people that were reviewing this that I watched said, "Are we supposed to imagine the baby up the tree with the noose?"
Yeah, the baby's crawled out of its bedroom along the branches in the tree with a huge coil of rope. It's tied a noose, and it's stood about 6 foot off the ground, and it's waited all night for him to come out.
But sometimes we see Hercules, but is he really there? Is that? I think where they got the mistake, because it was one of the reviews I watched suggested that there are other films with kids as the baddie, like The Omen or like Midwich Cuckoos, but the kids might have some men. Well, they're old enough to have conversations. B, also sometimes they influence other people to do things with their magic. Like in The Omen, the nanny who hangs herself because she loves Damien so much and she wants to impress him at his birthday party, and also the kids in Midwich Cuckoos who kind of all stare at the car that's driving on the road and cause it to crash. But it's a bit more. That's a bit more. That makes a bit more sense. But they're not quite sure what they're doing in this film because they don't show you who's holding the noose. But occasionally you do see like lightning and Hercules. But is he actually there, or is he? Because we don't really. We only see Hercules a couple of times in the modern day.
Yeah. Still
working at the. I mean, he's not sort of prowling around, encouraging the baby, or even meeting the baby, or it's still difficult to be sure whether he's supposed to really be there. Whether that's.
Yeah. I mean, that would have been good if he appeared in the nursery and spoke to the baby. That would give it a bit more emphasis. Or you would see him in the room with the baby, holding the baby. Because then when they come in the room, he's not there.
Because after Gino is hung from the tree, his body is also
dragged into
a drain, a storm drain, which we'd seen earlier actually.
With the small mouse
that was down the drain, and a man had. I don't know whether that small mouse was supposed to have blocked the drains or what, but
I know. What did they call that? It's a huge manhole cover, and if you can imagine, it's the size of I don't know. It's about 1 foot by 1 foot square, but it's a huge cover, and you get this impression that's a really deep drain, and the man's come to unblock it, and there's this tiny mouse.
Yeah.
So, or has the baby been shoving more bodies down it that we don't know about?
Well, I mean, everyone keeps going, oh, I don't want to be around that baby. Every time I see it, it gives me the creeps and all that sort of thing.
Yeah,
and it's
nobody
just
likes the baby.
The baby. Gino's dead.
We're starting a list now because this is when the death count starts to roll up high, isn't it?
Dr. Finch is summoned because Lucy is trying to find her missing husband, and because when she wakes up, because just before Gino got killed or murdered, they just got back from this nice meal and they'd had a bit of mummy and daddy time. So she wakes up and she's all happy after her
interlude.
Her interlude the night before. And so she can't work out why he would have left without saying goodbye. But it's even, I mean, I think some of that is a bit of a jump because she starts telling Mandy, oh, he's gone and run away, he's gone and run off. Well, he could have just gone to work. Or, I mean, admittedly, his secretary doesn't know where he is because she thought he was getting ready for the holiday. But, I mean, it's still a bit of a jump that he's, after they've had such a nice night, why is he going to run off with somebody?
Yeah, and if you did have a demonistic son, because at that point, she's now saying her son is possessed by a demon, then you'd be concerned that he would have done something to your husband.
So anyway, Dr. Finch comes over and gives her a sedative, but then he hears strange noises and goes out into the garden, and he gets decapitated with a spade, and he's standing up at the time. So it's either a baby on stilts, or I mean, it would have to be Hercules on stilts, to be honest.
It'd be Hercules, or he's on a trampoline jumping up and down, going, "There, have some."
Neither the baby or Hercules are known for their height. And
Hercules isn't an athlete person. He's been given the name Hercules. I think that was given to him more mockingly. Yeah. He is not a strong man. He's a very round, short person.
And Lucy wakes up all sort of groggy because of and then she I can't remember whether what she sees, whether she sees some of the, but anyway, she gets pursued by.
I think she goes downstairs and she sees Hercules, if memory serves me right.
And
she runs upstairs, doesn't she?
There's that weird scene though, because presumably she's hallucinating. She thinks it's Sister Albana, and Sister Albana turns around and it's Ralph Bates in her costume.
Yeah. It then becomes an acid trip for about a minute.
Yeah, with his eyes all rolled up and everything, the whites of his eyes. But anyway, she locks herself in a room and can't get the door closed. But then
Lucy. Please. Lucy. Go away, leave me alone, please.
Emergency. Which service?
I'm your mother, you can't hurt me. Lucy. I know why you hate me. You didn't want to be born. Go away. I'm your mother, you can't hurt me. Please go away.
Stupidly stands right in the crack of the door and gets stabbed with a pair of scissors. And so she's
screaming, I'm your mother, you can't kill me, I gave birth to you.
So what's she seeing? We don't see what she's seeing.
She must be seeing the baby.
She's seeing the baby, but goodness knows, is he floating towards her with a pair of scissors?
Yeah, because it's hitting her sort of in the chest area. So again, it's on stilts or on that trampoline.
But occasionally they do sort of cut to like Hercules chuckling and like he's seeing it, but it's very confusing as to what we're supposed to be seeing and we don't really see.
And then coming down the road is our salvation. It's the flying nun.
Yeah, Sister Albana galvanized into action.
Yes.
She has to perform an exorcism and she starts chanting in Latin. Baby's back in the room. This is where they have to try and make it look like there's some trauma happening to the baby. It's basically shaking the camera around a bit
and they move the baby at strange angles, don't they? I mean, the baby's it's quite happy. He's just like sat there looking at her, but they move it so it makes it look as though it's hanging off the wall and then on the floor.
They do. I mean, to be fair, I mean, a baby in a film studio probably does cry quite a bit. So they do.
Yeah.
They have filmed as much crying footage as they can. Presumably, whenever the baby cried, they're like, "Get a camera on that kid. We need." Because they don't want to upset the child.
No, definitely.
But if it cries, then they can make the use of the crying. And it rips at her vestments.
We must say it. At the same time, a show is going on in the strip club, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah.
With Hercules appearing. He's not stripping, he's just appearing.
He's dressed in like top hat and tails and dancing with the various girls. As Sister Albana does her chant, he's more affected than the baby appears to be honest. And eventually, when it ends, he's the one who collapses and dies, and the baby is just normal. Well, it's normal, and there's no extra twist.
Nope.
Like, you know, you don't get a twinkle in the eye of the baby or any sort of. It literally just ends at that. I mean, goodness knows what Sister Albana told the police.
Wow, that was going to be my next thing. What would she have told them? She'd have got arrested.
Yeah,
they'd have found all these bodies, and she would have got arrested and taken away, or she'd have been put in bedlam.
Caroline Munro escapes, doesn't she? She.
Yeah.
I mean, she doesn't. I mean, a bit like Tommy, she kind of vanishes after.
Well, the characters vanish without any explanation whatsoever.
And you know, Sister Albana's the only major. You know, I kind of thought that there was going to be a twist where she'd get killed in the last moments because.
Yeah.
But,
or she'd be exhausted and die, or
from
exhaustion, which would have made sense because it's an exhaustive thing doing fighting evil, isn't it?
I was wondering if there might be. I don't want to be born too.
No, please no.
She could come back and help somebody else's possessed baby. I mean, it could be a bit like that BBC sitcom that Nanny with Neris Hughes. Was it Nanny? But with demonic babies instead.
The demonic babies. She only works for people with demonic babies.
So perfect for a Sunday night audience.
So, out of 10, for a really good horror film, would you put it at?
I mean, it's perhaps not up there with some of my favourite giallos, because giallos can.
Do you think there's a hint of giallo here?
There is a little bit, yeah. But I think you'd probably be stretching it slightly. I mean, that might be partly because of the Italian characters. Well, they're not really Italian. They might think they are. But yeah, I mean, it's the same sort of. It's sort of the same time as the end of the giallo period in Italy. Yeah, I'd probably give it 7.5 out of 10. But a very enjoyable 7.5. There's often with the giallos as well, lots of plot holes and bits that you really want explained. So I mean that is a similarity between some of the giallos. But yeah, I mean 7.5 to 8, as you say, fun.
It's not gory. It's not gory at all, is it?
No.
It's not one of those films you could go and have nightmares over. It wouldn't put you off if you had a small baby looking after your child, would you? It's no Omen.
No. Like a lot of these films from this era, the phrase "it wouldn't get made today" is definitely true.
Yes, yes. I mean, on the bonkers scale, it's nearly touching a 9 for me.
The giallos do tend to be a bit more gory, and I do like a bit of
buckets of blood.
I could do with a bit if it had a bit more blood. A bit more gore, then it might have gone up to a 9 as well. But poor Joan Collins. At least it wasn't the end of her career. It was the middle of her career, and she had a lot of success to come in the 80s.
Yeah, so. Absolutely. Thank you, Paul. Last time you introduced me to giallo, and I have got many of those films. I've got 3 or 4 films now I'm working my way through. And I love that genre. And I do like 70s British horror films of this ilk. I mean, things like Deathline and I Don't Want to Be Born I Don't Want to Be Born is definitely on my favourite list of films. It's just that early 70s spawns such an unusual era of films. Thank you very much for joining us.
Well, My pleasure. And
thank you very much to Deals as well. Hi,
yeah,
Deals.
He's gone off to record another. He's gone off to record another podcast, I think.
As Paul has said, he is physically the Shy Life podcast. And if you've never heard the Shy Life podcast, get your ears on the airways. It is a treat. Where can they find you? What platforms they find you on, Paul?
Spotify and Apple, and then those are the two big ones.
Paul is all over the place.
Just like this film.
Thanks very much, Paul. You take good care of yourself. Hopefully we'll speak to you again soon.
That'd be great. Yeah, thanks for having me.
I hope you've enjoyed this edition of the Cinematic Sausage. My name has been and always shall be Warren H. Cummings. Thank you for stopping by and listening to us. It's greatly appreciated. And if you'd like to join us in our podcasting family, please let me know. You can contact me via the messaging on Twitter. I hope you all have an awesomely creepy Halloween evening. Good night.